We're going to go ahead and take a look at percents now. And just like ratios, percents are used and seen commonly in everyday life. And so let's take a look at this first task. Think about this here. Solve the following problem and explain your solution. Hopefully you have someone to explain it to. In the rectangle at the right, say 6 squares, and then tell me what percent of the rectangle is shaded. So you can deal with that if you want to pause and think about it before I show you an answer here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what kind of I outlined here. So here I shaded 6 of the squares out of the 40. So one way to think about it would to say that's 6 out of 40. And what I'm trying to do is I know percent means out of 100, right? Percent of a quantity is a rate out of 100 for every 100. And so right now, though, I have 6 out of 40. And so what I did is I was thinking about 6 out of 40 is the same as 12 out of 80, which is the same as 15 out of 100. And so in this case here, you end up with 15%. You see that I went up, we went up by 6, went up by 40, and if I go up by 20, that's half, and so I go up by 3, and that gives me to my 100 out of 100. So that was one way to think about it. Another way is I convert it what we learned in fractions to writing them as a decimal is I needed a base of a 100 or a 10. And so I got this one out of a base of I made this a base out of a base of 10 right here out of 1,000. So multiply the top and bottom by 25, I get 150 over 1,000. And then I put it out of 100, I get 15 out of 100, or your 15%. So that's what I was thinking about. Now, what do we need to know about percents? Well, first, percents, again, the word percent means per 100 or out of 100. 25% means 25 per 100. We can also write that as a fraction, 25 over 100, 25 out of 100, or 0.25, right? Because this is 25 hundredths. And we use that percent symbol. And what we think about as fractions, decimals, percents, that there's a relationship between those three, and you want to be good at moving between those. And so on these problems here, again, there's no math to do. It's just to consider what do these percents mean, right? Decline means to decrease or go down in value. So you have some amount and it goes down. Here, percent is being used as some proportion, some amount out of another amount, a ratio, right? Here, using percents as a sale price, you're going to be taking some value off. And then again, you can have an increase in looking at percents as 150, which we'll examine what does that mean. Okay, in this case, 150% means it increased its full value plus half of its value, 150%. But we'll talk more about that. As we see this diagram here, fractions, repeating decimals, percents, how they're connected to each other, means that in your situations, you're going to want to know how to convert from percents to fractions. Right? You have a percent and it's out of 100. Okay. You also want to go to decimals, but we know if we can go from a percent to a fraction, something out of 100, we could easily go to its decimal value. And so that's what we're looking at. There becomes some shortcuts. What people do is, oh, I move the decimal to the left, to right, to, in terms of how to convert them. It's important to look at some of these down here. 31% is 0.31, 213 is 2.13, 0.5% is 0.005. Again, making sure you have an idea of how you convert from a percent to a decimal. And you can see some of the diagram for those problems there. Also know how to go from decimals to percents. 0.83 is 83%, 5.1 is 510. Looking at different examples here. Many people, again, do this by moving the decimal to 2 places to the right. And that's how you convert a decimal to percent. And then lastly, you're going to convert fractions to percents, which you have here. Write each of the following in these terms so you can see my answers here for that, how we went from the different versions to the versions we have here. See if I can zoom in a little bit more for you here. There we go as you look at those answers. And then for practice, before you look at the answer here, try to get this completed. I'm going to post the answer in a couple of seconds, so pause if you don't want to see the answer. Try to complete that out there after looking at these examples of how I converted from decimals to fractions, fractions to percents, percents to decimals, and so forth. Here's your answer now to the other one. We're looking at here is, there it is right there. There you go.